Hey, folks, welcome back to The Pulse. My name is Matt. This is Crypto Heartbeat. It is May 22nd. And, folks, we're going to be talking today about tokenizing your community. There is so much opportunity that exists in this crypto space. I think most people don't realize what is actually happening and what this cycle of crypto means to them and their communities. What's amazing is back when I was a kid, I remember hearing and being interested in fan clubs. And if you're old like Crypto Heartbeat, you remember fan clubs, right? And I think about like the Beatles is a great example. We saw back in the day there was a volunteer that was in charge of the Beatles fan club or any band for that matter. And I remember seeing, the television program showing so many letters being poured in from fans all over the place. Well, what is the fan club of today? And ultimately, the fan club of today finds themselves in either Discord or Telegram for the most part. We find that these fan clubs don't go away. Why? It's because we have this desire to belong. We have this desire to fit in. And based on our temperaments, based on our interest, based on our culture, we have certain affinities. And your affinity is a really powerful thing because it is the essence of a shared interest that creates community. And what people don't realize is that community is incredibly important. Community is incredibly powerful. If you think about Wall Street Bets, do you remember that? There's an amazing documentary on Wall Street Bets that is on Netflix. And it talks about how a group of people through, I think, Reddit and some other tools got together and basically said, we're going to focus on pushing this. I think at the point it was GameStop stock. This also happened with AMC theaters as well. But the collusion that comes in with community is really the form of a cartel saying, hey, we're going to act as one. And if you think about this, this is not any new idea at all. Affinity for many, many, many years has been based on your geography. And affinity is based on a lot of times where you live. It's kind of the oldest affinity, if you will. It's national pride. What's interesting is there are some big thinkers, not too long ago, who shared these ideas and what we've seen happen. And I want to bring to you and share with you this future because I think it's really powerful. But there are some very important things you need to consider because there's a right way to tokenize a community and there's a wrong way to tokenize a community. But, so many people that are out there, let's say in the YouTube space, and you probably don't know this, but there are 55,000 YouTube channels over 1 million subscribers. Are all of those worth watching? No. But think about that for a second. That's 55 billion people. Well, there's only 8 billion people on the planet, so there's some overlap there. But there are 55,000 YouTube channels above 1 million subscribers. Now, if you think about it, you whittle that group down, how many of those are legitimate that actually have a community around them? Well, if you have been into Fortnite, my son came in right at the right time and we got into Fortnite. Fortnite created this tremendous group. Well, now you look at streamers who are streaming Fortnite gameplay. They have this incredibly vibrant community behind them, and it's often in Discord. So what we don't realize is what has happened is based on people's affinity, which changes over time, you find that community develops. And look at our community within the crypto space, depending on what cryptos you're into. The Pulse Chain ecosystem, the Hex ecosystem, the Richard Heart ecosystem has a really vibrant community. And if you ask people, what's the value of the community, they wouldn't just talk about number go up and the money, right? They would talk about other things. So this is going to be the topic for today. That's a bit of the intro. So if you're interested in how do you tokenize your community, what is a community? A lot of this content is actually focused for people outside of our direct Pulse Chain community. It's like, well, how do I do this? Who can help me do this? And this is what we're all about. I'm all about finding ways in which people can take back their freedom and sovereignty. And how do you do that? Well, you have to separate it from the centralized players. And those centralized players right now are central banks. But the idea that really we're building digital nations. It's the same concept of people that agree, right? It's got leadership, it's got rules, it's got, it doesn't have to have physical boundaries, but it also has a currency. And the real powerful thing, which so many people that are building community or, inadvertently are building community because they have so many subscribers and followers, is monetization. How do I monetize this? But how do I also empower my community? And so what I want to do after we get through the chat and say hello to you, we're gonna hear from Raul Pal. And this is the inspiration that inspired me and our team to be a part of tokenizing communities across the world. So first, let's say hello to you, and then we'll get into it. Anders, good to see you. Thanks for being first here. It's great to have you in from Sweden, alive for the first time, my friend. Absolutely interested. Bring it, heartbeat. Francis Paul is here. And yes, Finbear, I did get your Telegram message, and I'm going to check it out, my friend, and I will respond to you. KDM's here. Hello. Um, let's see who else is here. John May made it. You made it. You're not late, my friend. You're right on time. Force of One, good to see you. And Rich Cranium, thanks for all you do. Crypto Heartbeat Godspeed, thank you so much. And there he is, Dan McMillan saying hello to you. All right, so let's talk about this. This is pretty interesting when you hear from Raul Powell. He was a former Goldman Sachs guy. He went to the dark side of crypto. He is a macroeconomic guy. And this is, I want you to hear this because this is from 2 years ago. He talks about this still to today. But I want you to hear from him first because this sets the stage really, really well.
Give us a sense, Rob, of what the tokenization of culture means. Really, in 5 minutes, Ash? In 5 hours, it would be hard to do, but let's put you on the spot. In the past, huge communities coalesced around other things. People, passion, culture, brands that you love, Nike, whatever it may be. And you couldn't really, you have a certain level of involvement in them. Some of them you didn't even have shares to trade. Maybe you couldn't afford to. Maybe you didn't have access to. And then suddenly the tokenization of culture and communities and things like whether it's the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is a community of NFT token holders that kind of enjoy this thing, whether it's within gaming, there's culture within gaming, Fortnite has a huge culture, or whether it's the culture of your favorite artist or the sports star or your football club. These things are deep cultural institutions. Yeah. And tokenizing that allows you to participate with the vibrancy of that culture. I mean, it's groundbreaking. It's like thinking, oh, I've just discovered the punk movement in 1977 and be able to buy tokens in it. And you can be part of that community and also make money of it too. And also by that token, you can be connected to other parts of the community. It's not just about making money. It's about creating value for each other. So all of this tokenization stuff is all about how humans organize societies. So once we came out of Jared Diamond's book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, goes through this in quite depth, is once you start to come out of small groups of 100 and something people and you start to get into larger groups, so from villages to towns, to organize people, you generally need a leader or set of leaders, a set of rules, a mission, and often a system of value. Now, that's the same way we organize religions. So the value in religions is often maybe about, if you don't do this, if you don't follow the rules, heaven or hell, that's the value proposition, or reincarnation, depending what religion you're talking about. And some of them also have money attached, like the Catholic Church. So they create network effects around complex adaptive societies, and it's a way of controlling large groups of people, or organizing them. Control's the wrong word. Tokens allow us to do that on the internet. And the internet, all of us are all part of communities. Like you and I are part of the Real Vision community. We're both part of the FinTwit community. And you'll be part of other communities that I don't know anything about, and I'm part of communities that you don't know anything about. But we play an active participation in that community to various levels. And we can put all of the community members together by giving them a value proposition. Yeah. And that would be a token. So this is a cultural thing. So this is so groundbreaking. It's really difficult. People need to follow a lot of my videos on this because I've been talking a lot about, there's a lot in that Gary Vee interview about it as well. This is one of the biggest things I've ever seen or heard of. And it's happening because I know because of who I'm speaking to about it.
Okay, so folks, that was from 2 years ago. I've been following Raul Pal and his talk about kind of social stuff, and it's gotten really, really done a lot of research. But what we're talking about is the fundamentals of human interaction. And these tools, they're not brand new, but they've changed. This ability to communicate across cultures, across millions or, well, thousands of miles. I mean, look at this. I mean, just as an example, Anders was the first in, and he's saying, hey, good evening from Sweden. I've never had a friend in Sweden. Well, there was this girl. She was an exchange student in high school. But Anders is my friend in Sweden. We've never met. But when you think about this connection that we have around a cryptocurrency, is it about Hex? Is it about Pulse Chain? And what's really amazing about this is we share value with one another because we can relate to one another, right? There probably people, my gray hair and my age attracts a certain type of person. There's all kinds of different messages and voices. But when we look at communities that have been built so far, there are so few people who have tokenized their community. And I want to make a case to you that tokenizing a community is a really, really powerful idea. And of course, Raul Pal obviously agrees with me. But here's the thing that I think is really important. A lot of times people think tokenization is like, well, we've got Bitcoin. Do we need another Bitcoin? Here's the point. It's kind of like you started a YouTube channel. You've done really well. You developed a community. And what's amazing is the interaction between the people within the community is really kind of a form of love. They have affinity for it. If they could get together, they would. And when they do get together, it's like high-fiving and hugging. And the people will act as if they knew each other forever. And it's amazing that this is something that's built into the human experience. But if you think about finances, what people think is it's this distant thing for only finance majors. But if you actually look into what makes finances work, they understand human interaction. Look at the Wall Street cheat sheet. The Wall Street cheat sheet is actually human emotions. And if you think about doing well in the financial markets, you have to understand human emotions. Well, because we have the tools now to consolidate ourselves by affinity, by culture, by interest, by the things that we love, it gives people a sense of connection and belonging. And I will say this, I think it's actually more powerful than the money because one of the deepest human needs is to belong, to fit in, and to be understood. And there's a big part of that. When I look at all of these meetups that I've been to, you get people from all walks of life. You get people from all socioeconomic backgrounds. You get people from all races, all ethnicities, genders, all those things. But there's something underneath it that is not spoken that connects all of us together. It's a shared interest or experience. And so here's the thing that's interesting. In the past, we have been organized around our geography or proximity. And a lot of this has been driven out of a nationalistic approach. So in your country, you have a means of exchange. You can't bring your currency to the United States and spend it at the corner store to get a Coca-Cola. I mean, I cannot spend Canadian money here. I can't use the Swiss franc here. And does that have value? It absolutely does have value. And you think about currency exchanges and all that. This is just a picture. It's really the old model of how people, basically built a system in which they could have a more convenient and efficient means of exchange. And now we're seeing with digital, everything going digital, that there is a war and there's a battle going on. And that battle is going on for control of the economic system because they see it slipping out of their hands. Well, what's the proxy for this? The proxy is the Old West, right? People went west. 1861, you had the Homestead Act of 1861, signed by Abraham Lincoln, that would say, hey, if you'll settle the West, we'll give you some land. And you get 160 acres. And what's amazing about that is that was really one of the first airdrops of land. And if you think about that, that's really what an airdrop of token is. I'm going to basically, if you do these things and you kind of promise to care for this, I'm going to give you something for free or really, really cheap. And why would you do that? Why did Abraham Lincoln and the Homestead Act, why did they do that? Because they knew there had to be incentive for you to go out there and bust your back to be able to till the soil and make something of it. But if you think about the American West, that's how it was essentially tokenized. They had to give it away. So there are principles and there are things you have to consider when you're tokenizing a community. But I believe that the benefits of doing it is so significant. And we have right now meme coins, right? How do meme coins happen and how are they different than this? I think the meme coin is just the tip of the iceberg of an example of the value. Why does somebody take Pepe? Let's look at Pepe. Pepe had what, 5 million% increase in value since the beginning. It's still going up and to the right. Well, what did they use? They used an image that people can relate to, right? Pepe the Frog. Well, how powerful is that? Was there a big community around that? No, it just happened to catch on, and there's probably a number of reasons behind the scenes why it did. But at the end of the day, is that where your affinity lies? Does your affinity lie in a logo of a frog? No, it's an indication of something greater. People are utilizing these things right now, which are common cross-cultural icons, and those cross-cultural icons are useful for getting people to coalesce into some sort of community. But you might come because of this recognition of Pepe, but you stay because of something else. Well, across the world, whether you're a YouTuber and an influencer, you've built community around something really valuable, and you are providing a significant value. And you think about this, it is so important and so significant that we even have Patreon. Think about this for a second. There are people who do all kinds of things. I watch people who make knives, make furniture, woodworking, whatever it may be. And I watch a guy who fixes watches, right? Well, how random is that? Am I into watches? I don't even wear a watch, but I'm really interested in watching him do this. Well, when he does the cleaning portion of his watches, there are hundreds and hundreds of people who are giving monthly via Patreon. Why? That sponsorship and that support. Why would they do that? And it's interesting. I'll bet you that most of the people in the Patreon are probably also in the Telegram and the Discord. Well, that's how an individual says, I want to monetize this. I'll give you a sneak peek, or I'll give you advanced information, or I'll give you specialty content. But why would someone do that? Well, you think about organizations in the nonprofit space, which is my background and career. Why would somebody donate to the American Heart Association or your church or to a parachurch organization that's feeding children? Because you believe that that's an important mission. Well, what's happened with social media is it has enabled people to interconnect. It used to be that you just loyally gave to your university or whatever it may be that you had an affinity for. But now it's getting to the point where there's real value exchanged, and that value that is exchanged is belongingness. It's about fitting in. I went to the first meetup in Austin, Texas for a Hex meetup, and this was right after I had started my channel. And I got there, and a guy came up to me that I never met before, and he said, "Hey, man," and I thought he was going to say, "Hey, I'd love for your content on YouTube." And you know what he said? "I got more money than I know what to do with." So he said. That was his quote. Now, this was in the bull run, the last bull run. And you know what I heard? I heard between that, I heard him say, "Will you be my friend?" And you're like, well, how does that work? Well, you realize that more money than I know what to do with, that tool isn't giving me what I want. And if you think about it, it's good to have the resources, but in a way, there's something else that's being traded here. And that is purpose, that is belonging, that's connection, that's understanding. And people don't value that. No one talks about this. Everybody's just like, hey, number go up, flashy thing. I'm making a case to you that if people in mass that have relationships built by influence and they have built a community and they're legitimate people, there is a way in which you do this. But if you do it, you're actually giving to the people that you serve, the people that you provide content for the people that you influence. And so many people are worried because of things like FTX, and they're like, well, what about the SEC? And those are very legitimate things. But what we've done is we've looked at what are the principles, what are the things you need to consider. And so I've got a little bit of a list here, and I want to share with you. If you're somebody that's going, hey, what if you tokenize this community? Well, we've done that with the Texas Nationalist Movement, with the Texit initiative, with Texan Token, 3,000 plus churches in the Philippines called Ophir. But when you start looking at other communities, the trust exists, the belongingness exists, the connection exists. And I just use YouTube as an example of a place where people anywhere in the world can digitally connect. Well, if you look at gaming, inside of games, like, for example, Fortnite, you have V-Bucks. Well, V-Bucks have a value within the game. Well, if you remember the old World of Warcraft, there are economies that are being set up. Axie Infinity, one of the first gaming crypto where you play the game to earn. and that would be a play to earn type of model. Well, any community that has that has something significant. And here, let me make a point. We in the Pulse chain have seen a lot of meme coins come and go. And so what ends up happening is a meme coin gets launched, and I've been into them, and you've been into them. And when you see these, you go, okay, what are you hoping for? I think at first blush, you're hoping for number go up, right? And so if you think about it, there are different ways in which people launch tokens. And a lot of times memes are controlled by a group of people who may be in a paid group, and they want to basically get the best possible start, but they have to coordinate with a group of people who have resources. And so let's say you're a developer and you got an idea for a meme coin. Well, one of the key things, just because you created a token doesn't mean anyone cares about it. You actually have to have liquidity and you have to have holders. So there's a whole strategy around how do you do token distribution? And depending on your community, you've got to consider that. So the number one thing is understanding your community and essentially how you go about designing your programmable money, number one, and two, how you do token distribution. Because we've learned the hard way. If you just hand out token to people, they will dump on your head. And so you have to be very strategic about who are the people that hold it and why. One of the great things about the staking function within Hex or Texan is the fact that you are providing people an incentive to lock up, because we know what drives the price is buying and holding. More buyers than sellers means the price goes up, and it's extremely cyclical. But the long-term future is if money is going to become digital and we're going to see central bank digital currencies and everything is going to move there. Well, if you don't tokenize your community, you're going to be stuck with whatever the default system is. And that's where the big, big, big opportunity comes. Okay, so number one, tokenomics, which is the programming of the money. How do you want it programmed, and what is that incentivized? Two, token distribution. Don't just give it to people, right? You have to be strategic about token distribution. Three, you have to understand liquidity. Without liquidity and setting the price, you have to have people who make the market. There's a lot that goes into liquidity and the strategies for that. The fourth one is jurisdiction. And this is probably one that probably should have just started with. The United States of America is not very friendly to tokenization of communities. Why? Because of the Securities and Exchange Commission not having clear regulations as it relates to crypto. But there are jurisdictions in the world that are much more friendly to these type of things. And so if you're considering doing something like this, you likely don't want this to be in some sort of company in the wrong jurisdiction. The other thing is, it is typical for people to think, well, I need a company and I need a central office and we need a staff. No, you don't. You've got a community already, and these folks are volunteers and they receive value. Showing people how they can win, not just by scamming people, but how you can actually create an ecosystem within your community where this means of exchange and value transfer and preservation of value actually fits in. The rewards of it, the access, there's so many different things you can consider. But I think jurisdiction is extremely important. Who has jurisdiction over what you're doing? Well, there's many people in decentralized finance or DeFi who have created immutable contracts on the blockchain. There are no administrative keys. They can't be taken down. And if you're on the right blockchain, there's a really good chance that once you launch and as you have people grow within that community, it can never be taken down. And that's a really, really powerful thing as we look at the future, because this battle is over the means of exchange. And ultimately, right now, the battle's over stablecoins. The other piece of this is the idea of decentralization. And I would make the case that if your plan is not just to monetize and not just to extract value from your community, but to bring them value, I think the key is true decentralization. You need to be in a place that's not going to be regulated or taken down. You need to have, fixed supply of your token, and you need to have it immutable. It needs to not have admin keys. It needs to not be able to be rugged, right? Locked liquidity, and then you can't change the code. Those are important principles. And there's a lot that goes, considerations that go into those things. But I think the opportunity is tremendous. But you still also have to have a framework. You have to have a layer one. You have to be on an ecosystem that is going to be friendly to your community. And what I mean by that is, you know, Bitcoin, for example, everyone talks about Bitcoin being decentralized. Well, no, the hash power and then the holders have basically gobbled it up and basically made it centralized. Now, on Ethereum, you could say, well, as a layer one, it's OFAC compliant. You can look that up, but it's not a great thing because it represents this idea of being able to pause or limit people in their transactions. Whether some of it may be legitimate, it also can be used to control. So when you look at layer ones that are out there, I think one of the only layer ones that has all the right functionality of Ethereum, because it's a direct fork of it, is the Pulse chain. The Pulse chain is properly decentralized, has a very vibrant community, and it will never be OFAC compliant. It's going to exist outside. And so we in this community look at it and say, we're building the alternative financial system. But imagine you did it right. And based on your community, you decided you were going to do a fair launch and you were going to incentivize the right people. And you found yourself at the right timing within the market. What's amazing is I look at some of these tokens that have done really, really well. For example, Hex in this last cycle did a 10,000x in 623 days with about 150,000 holders. Think about this for a second. If you're somebody that's got a YouTube channel, you got more than 1 million users, you've got, let's say over 100,000 people that are in and out of Telegram or Discord. You have more than most of the best cryptocurrencies that are out there. Because at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're giving to this community a means to not only preserve wealth, but grow it, and then to be able to have incentivize that helps them have equity, right, in your ecosystem, within your affinity group, within your community. And someone, I don't know his name, we talk about universal basic income, which scares the heck out of me sometimes, depending on how it's administered. But people talk about universal basic equity is having equity, having skin in the game, having ownership in your community. We think about that in terms of companies. Well, I have stock and all of that. It's all changing. And that's why tokenization is so popular. Well, not popular, it's so powerful, but it's not being done, right? And I think people have been afraid because they see how the US SEC has come down on and has been, completely opaque. There's no clarity. I think we're going to see that clarity in the US here coming soon in this next election. But also, I believe we're going to see more and more people embracing this because everything is going that way. But that means you're early. And I think that anyone who knows anyone who has built communities and affinities, I don't care what they are. If you have a group of people who have common interests and you have engagement, you have an opportunity to tokenize. The long-term benefit of that is amazing because essentially you're creating your own economy outside of the control of centralized players. And so what do you see? The proxy for this is once again the old west. Somebody finds gold in the ground or silver or some precious metal, let's say. That's value in the ground. And what happens? Word gets out and everybody travels in. And we've heard this story many, many times. What are they doing? They're crowding around a center of value. Huh. It's really interesting. Well, what's interesting is just look at cities. Where do cities sit? Cities sit in waterways. Why? Because water's pretty vital. It is a source of value. And then you had the Old West, and somebody struck, they found gold in some place, and it was some remote area. And next thing you know, a town popped up. And within that community, it might have been hundreds of miles from any civilization. And people that were pretty hardy travel out there. And usually it was run by a company because the company owned the mine and they were willing to, employ people to work. And what's interesting is those company towns that came up ended up having, all the basic necessities. It had a hotel, it had a casino, it had, a general store, it had a bar, right? It had a tavern and a brothel, pretty much. And if you think about all of these things that popped up, well, then if you think about you're working in the mine and you need something at the store, right? And you go in, why does that guy give you credit? And so this economic system pops up that has nothing to do with the nation that you're in. The United States didn't influence it. You've got gold that's in the ground, and this person is getting paid. And so the relationships and all that, it made it easier to create essentially your own currency within that town. And it started with credit. But you still had the bartering system. And as long as people are together, they're going to be trading value. Whether you use a proxy for it or not, at the end of the day, it's some sort of value that's based on human labor. That's the same thing that we're doing now. We are building these digital nations, these digital affinity groups, these social tokens that actually represent some of the things that are most meaningful to people. I would say to you, the things that are going to survive are not the memes. It's the communities maybe that are a part of those memes, but the tissue, the fabric, the things that make them stick is the people and their interactions, not the logos. So if you're somebody that already has trust and affinity and relationships, and it's really built around trust, you have an opportunity not just to monetize, but to tokenize that community. And in my opinion, those who do that and do that well are going to reward not only themselves, but their followers, their subscribers. And think about that concept of winning together because you're preserving value within this group. And if you do it right on the right layer one with the right tokenomics and the right immutability and decentralization, no one can put their hand into it. And that is amazing. Raoul Pal, who I mentioned at the beginning of this, was the first one to say that I heard say, in the past, you used to win a war, you would kill the other guys, take the gold, and rewrite the rules in your favor. What this means is this is the first time in human history where regular people like you and me can separate financial power from political power because it was always the people with the guns who wrote the rules about the money. Look at this. Regular people now have an equal footing with the guys at Jekyll Island or the central bankers or the guys that have the hedge funds. Regular people in community. And so, in a way, why wouldn't you tokenize your group? Because you're actually preserving wealth within that group. And it becomes a valuable commodity, if you will. But the other thing I want you to realize is that if you have a really vibrant community, there are people who recognize that vibrant community. You might say, I'm not a big Fortnite fan, but you know what? I recognize that my son really likes that. And I see that there's some really cool things happening there. I might want to invest in that because I believe that this is going to be the future location of value. And so you preserve and strengthen value within those communities. And it's not just in gaming. It's, it could be your YouTube channel. It could be whatever you have as far as trust and followers and community being built. It could be religious organizations. It could be nonprofit organizations. It could be anywhere where you have members who they're on fire for your cause. But most people think that this is just, oh yeah, you're starting some cryptocurrency because you want to get rich. No, this is a fundamental shift in the financial system. And if you understand actually what's at stake, you're doing an incredible service for people because at the end of the day, if you have enough people and, in this environment, if you had 50,000 people who are actually actively involved, you're one of the best cryptos in the world. Do you know that? Most of these things start out with some developers doing something and borrowing some meme coin. They go to some paid group that's got 50 or 100 guys that got some money, and then they basically throw it out into the market, pump the heck out of it, and it gets on the radar. And once people see it on the radar, everybody apes into that. That is the volatility of really scamming people, and then they end up rug pulling. It's amazing how much money people have made in these things that have only lasted for 3 months or 6 months or less. What if you actually were built on something that's not going to go away anywhere in the near future? These could be institutions, these could be organizations, these could be charities, these could be nations. Anyone out there that has trust and affinity can build value. But right now, we can do that by making a decision. My wife often says, well, don't you have to have permission? I said, no, you don't have to have permission to write to the blockchain. I don't determine what you do. People have to do their own research on things. But the amazing thing about it is it's possible and can be done. Does it mean that if you create a token, It's always going to be successful? No, it's not. But this is an opportunity that I don't think that this window is going to always be there. The regulators want to shut this down because think about this. He who controls the gold makes the rules. That's the golden rule, right? So why would they want to let regular people have the ability to create and program money? This is the whole premise of Richard Hart. If you're going to preserve freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom to transact, freedom of privacy, you are going to have that in a place that people who want to control you can't touch it. That means the infrastructure has to be properly decentralized and you have to defend it. Otherwise, you're just going to go along with the program. So, I want to help you or someone that you know tokenize their community because I think there's tremendous value in it. And I think that this is the way. There's not one ring to rule them all. There's not one token. Like everybody's going to get Pepe, and Pepe is going to be the next world reserve currency. Folks, it's just not going to happen. That's not how it's working. There's going to be thousands upon thousands of interchangeable and interswappable and decentralized exchanges. And your value is preserved maybe within a relatively small group of people, but it can be swapped for other things and bring value. Because as this all goes digital, fiat's going to go away, and that value that you preserved there and brought more people in, and people are like, wow, I could invest in this group. This is a really strong community. I may not be interested in battling with foam swords, but I see that these crazy people are really into it, and I believe that those people are going to tell other people about it, and it's a growing trend. There are older people who go, who in the world wants to watch somebody play a video game? Well, a lot of people do. So as you look at these trends, I believe that this social or fandom or affinity based tokenization is a big part of the future. Now, couple that with real world assets, that's what's happening. Imagine you had backing of real world assets that weren't controlled by centralized parties. And that's the other side of the coin. And that's what we're working on is how do you bring a tremendous amount of liquidity that's locked into the space and strengthen communities that already have trust? Folks, this is an absolute revolution. And I believe that it's important to tokenize your community while you can. So I know that out of the 87 people that are watching this now, or the hundreds that'll watch it later, you have this connective tissue to all these different places. We've helped people that want independence for their country. We've talked to people who have affinity for their church, their religious organization. There are so many other places, but it needs to be done right because it can be done wrong. And if you're wanting to do something like this to scam people, it's the wrong motivation because actually, if it's done well, it actually frees people from a system that enslaves them and it extracts value from them. And so I think that that's a really important way to approach it. Thanks for being here. We'll get back into the chat, say hello to you, and then we will sign off. But thanks for this. I wanted to do this for quite some time, is to encourage people who have already built community to tokenize. Because you haven't seen this, right? Name the top 10 YouTubers who have created their own cryptocurrency and have value exchange within their communities. There's maybe a handful of them. There are 55,000 YouTubers with over 1 million subs. And there's only a handful of people who have done this type of thing. That's not counting celebrities. That's not counting all different people who have followings. And I'm just mentioning just one platform of YouTube. And it's probably declining the most. But if it's done right and it's communicated well, and that's why, this is months and months ago, maybe years ago, I did an open letter to Jordan Peterson because Jordan Peterson was trying to create an organization that was going to stand up against the World Economic Forum. And when I heard him talk about this, I'm like, this is it. Do you know how many people and how much you could expand your reach and how many people would join and be a part of investing in that because they want to see something that is in opposition to the World Economic Forum with leaders like Jordan Peterson and others who had come together? That's so ripe for tokenization, but they don't see it, right? They don't see that, oh, wow, this could be a means not only to fund what we're doing, but to attract people and actually be tied to the thing that controls the power, and that's the money. So what do? They talk and they talk, and they might set up a charitable organization, but it's just not the model these days. And I should know. I was in that charitable world for 23 years. This is the new system by which people support. And what's really amazing about it is, imagine you contributed to this community and it created value for you, monetary value. That's the whole thing. Because essentially what you're doing is, with the right vision, the right leaders, the right tokenization, the right tokenomics, you're attracting people from across the world to say yes to you. And what do we want in fundraising and development and value creation? We want the resources to be able to accomplish the mission. And that's the whole point. Viber Finance knows this. Real world assets for the win. South Texas Crypto says, so when crypto heartbeat token? Likely never, because I'm not one of those guys, right? I want to be the ones that is helping people make the right decisions about how do you tokenize these things the right way, so that you don't fall prey to issues of jurisdiction or, rug pulls or those type of things. I want to work with people who genuinely want to bring value to their communities, but I appreciate the sentiment. Hexonium, what's going on? There's Ryan Hungate. The high fives are happening even with all the blood in the streets. Just imagine if we had a long-term positive movement with price and stability. And Ryan, just to encourage you, I pulled a clip from it was another Raoul Pal clip, and he compared the time after the halvenings and what happened right after the halvenings and then the last 3 cycles. He basically said, we're coming up on the banana zone. I'd encourage you. That will encourage you. This, Richard Hart basically said his top call for Bitcoin is $241,500. It's at what, 76, 69, 70, something like that. I'm not sure what it is today. That's a long way to go. And you think about that kind of value. We've got the Ethereum ETF coming up. The banana zone's coming. And I think it's going to be really, truly an altcoin summer. And that doesn't rely just on Richard Hart, pumping the token. Okay. So I really believe you will be rewarded for sticking this thing out, because there are so many good people out there building things within this Pulse Chain ecosystem. And it's bonded with something that I think is going to move. And there is $600 million sitting on the sideline. And we got cheap transactions. And ultimately, we have an ecosystem that's not controlled by centralized parties. It's not controlled by the VCs. And that's kind of the benefit of having, a benevolent leader like Richard Hart. But you gotta plant your flag somewhere, right? You got to press down on something. Taryn, hello, everyone. Good to see you. John May saying hello. Mike Ostell, what's up? Better late than never. Mike, I hope you're doing well, and your wife. Thanks for checking in. Liquidity, community, purpose, need, and value. Right side up. How to garner enough partners. Combined community of Jesus followers. Well, Dan, that's the big, what's really interesting, you mentioned that. If you think about the largest organization that exists on planet Earth, affinity group, the largest affinity group on planet Earth. And if you think about the infrastructure that community has, it would be the universal church. And if you think about this, no matter where you go on planet Earth, you might not find a grocery store or a post office, but there's a church. Now, they're not of the same denomination. They're not, but they literally call, on Christ. And it's really interesting that one of the largest entities that has some sort of infrastructure and hierarchy and resourcing is really that group. But it takes people with vision, and you're one of those guys. But you can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink. And so many people don't see things ahead of time. They see things after it's reached the top. And that's why it's a challenge, because everybody wants to buy the green candles. Folks, this is the time to build. This is the time to build. That's my opinion, but that's all it is. It's not financial advice. It's an opinion from a YouTube guy. Tokenize, a simple belief system. There you go. Let's go, Texan. What's interesting is Texan is going to be represented at the largest Republican convention in the world, which is in Texas and San Antonio this next 3 days. Fantastic. South Texas Crypto says, part of my crypto speech is showing how my 14-year-old since baby, always knew about coins and tokens for games. So no learning curve. Absolutely. You make a great point. Really, since the beginning. Yeah, tokens and, bucks. And think about V-Bucks and all that. Economics is being taught in these games. And if you think about it, what's really strange to me? Imagine if the V-Bucks scenario, right, was intentionally a DeFi token. Okay. And I think about this because I play Fortnite. Old man crypto heartbeat. Yes, I play Fortnite. And they give away V-Bucks on us. And you know what I always wanted? So this is a rabbit hole, but I'm going to share this with you. I always thought about the Fortnite map, and if you've ever played it, it's so cool because every time you play it, it's different, and it's a pretty good sized map. It's not Warzone, but there are some other maps that are much much bigger. And I always thought, what if they were to, put out like treasures, right? They have treasure chests that you go find, and they have weapons and all this stuff. But what if you played that game and you played it enough, you would occasionally run into token. Now, this is the whole concept of kind of play to earn. But if you think about it, that economy that exists inside is completely restricted to that game, and it's only things for skins and other things like that. Opening up all of those communities and games to real currency, I might not play the game of Warzone or Fortnite, but I sure would invest in the token and speculate on the token. It's interesting. And it's a good point, though. So there's no learning curve. Now, what will their kids do? See money makes them think. Absolutely. Drakes, tokenize, absolutely. Folks, these are just the trends. And you start coupling this with real world assets, and you literally have a standalone alternative financial system. I think without the real world asset backing, we don't really have, all the legs to stand on. When it's just speculative, it's a casino, and the real money doesn't get in. We're going to have locked liquidity that's based on real world assets so that people have confidence to say, yeah, I'll drop a sizable amount of resources here. And it's not just a casino, it's actually built on something of real value. That's where things are really going to get exciting because it's going to pull the real money, not just the play money. Rich liberations, let's set the captives free. That's the plan. Unlock global generosity by giving. And the whole point of this is to say we're willing to give this infrastructure and this counsel and this guidance to people who want to tokenize the right way because they actually want to see what's best for their community. Crypto is much more than mad gains. It's for our freedom. The big thing is liquidity. Absolutely. I mean, just the token existing doesn't matter. Is the market being made? And I will say this, I think the greatest innovation is not the tokenization. It's not smart contracts. It's actually the automated market maker where individual people can make the market. Because without liquidity, you're right, John, there's nothing, right? Can't trade, can't swap. You got nothing. Folks, thanks for joining the Pulse today. My name is Matt. This is Tokenizing Your Community. Hopefully it's valuable. Forward this on to a friend or somebody you think would benefit from it. We are stand available. If anyone's interested in talking to me and our team about tokenization of their community where they have trust, it's simply a DM on Telegram to Crypto Heartbeat 22. I hope you're doing well. Take care of yourself and do not mess with Texas. Take care, everybody.